If another motherfucker call me paranoid or schizo, I swear I'ma lose my shit. Quit calling me paranoid and schizo. Just because I like to check the light switches in the master bathrooms at the Airbnbs with that black cherry Kool-Aid. And then I get my tremors and I make sure I go against the grain just like this right here. Look at that. Then I always get my magic magnetum working and make my dots as the reference points. I don't think nobody can pass that in regular motion. People always calling me paranoid and schizo. Just because I like to check the light switches in the master bathrooms with those Reese's Pieces cups. But I don't care. This method flawless for real. Basically all you gotta do is just get your clippers and you wanna make sure you go against the grain just like this. I always use my finger to wipe off any residue. Just look at it. And then what you gotta do is get your mark and you wanna make your dots as the reference points. Wow, look at that. Call me paranoid or schizo. I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I'ma always check the light switch in the master bathrooms using those Krabby Patty gummies. And then I always get my tremors and I always make sure to go against the grain just like this. Wow, look at that. I always use my finger to wipe off any residue that's on her. And then you want to get your magic magnetic marker and make your dots as the reference points. Look at that. On cur, on cur, on cur, on cur, on cur, on cur, on.
Some people like to call me paranoia, because I like to hang my piss bottle on the mirror. Man, this ain't no piss bottle, it's a static electricity bottle, bro.
On cur, 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 on. Call me paranoid or schizo. I don't care. But I always use cocktail sauce when I'm checking windows at Airbnbs. You just never know. People always calling me paranoid and schizo. But I don't care. I'ma always check the light switches in the master bathrooms at the Airbnb. Sorry, yeah, I got a mouthful of sunflower seeds. I was hungry when I was making this video. So basically all you gotta do is make sure you get your clippers and you go against the grain just like this. I always use my finger to wipe off any residue that's on there. Then you wanna get in there nice and tight just like this right here. Look at that. Wow, look at that. I don't think nobody getting past this in regular motion. Just look at it. I always make sure I make a couple passes on the top. Then I use my finger to wipe off everything. People always calling me names like paranoid and schizo. But I don't care. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I'ma always check the light switch in the master bathroom with a fun-sized Snicker. Because you just never know. Wow. People always calling me names like paranoid and schizo. But I don't care. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I'ma always check the light switch in the master bathroom with those airheads. And then I add my dots as reference points. Wow. Call me paranoid or schizo. I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the light switch in the master bathroom with milk duds. You just never know. Call me paranoid. Schizo. I don't care. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the light switch in the master bathroom. Basically, all I do is just go to the nearest grocery store and I pick up me an iced oatmeal cookie. Then I just take me a little bite and I set it and put it at the light switch just like that. Sorry, y'all, I got some seeds in my mouth. I always like to eat me some sunflower seeds at the Airbnb. Basically, all you gotta do is just get your clippers and make you a couple passes just like that. I always use my finger and wipe off any residue that's on there. And then you wanna go against the grain just like this right here. Look at that. That's perfect. That's perfect. Look at that. Then you want to make a couple passes on the bottom too, just like that. Then you want to make sure you get your magic magnetic marker. You want to make your dots as the reference point. Just never know. This method flawless for real. I don't think nobody can pass that. Wow. I'ma tell y'all how all this started and why I check the Airbnb so much. So basically, when I rent an Airbnb, I always ask the host about the light switches in the master bathrooms. And I always know what they gonna say just by their response. I can just feel it. And I always make sure I keep me some sugar cookies around. And since it was Halloween, I had this pumpkin one, so I put it at the light switch just like that. And then I got my trimmers and I make sure I get in there nice and tight just like that. So basically, when I was staying in this Airbnb in Arizona, I noticed something was blinking in the ceiling fan. And then I noticed that when I went in the bathroom, every time I turned the light off, I seen something at the light switch. And ever since I exposed them and went viral, now I got everybody in my inbox calling me names like paranoid and schizo. But I don't care. Every time I rent an Airbnb, I'ma always check it using my flawless methods. Because you just never know. Wow, look at that. I always get my magic magnetic mark and I make sure I make my dots as the reference points just in case. Cause sometimes the Airbnb hosts, they don't even leave the Airbnb, they stay in there. Wow, look at that, that's perfect. On cur, 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 Onker, 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 onker. Call me paranoid or schizo. Onker. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the light switches in the master bathroom. Basically, I just get a hold of the host and I ask them about it. And then I see what they say. And determining on how they answer it, I already know what to do. I always just go to the nearest Walmart and pick up me some Vaseline. And I just put it up there in place just like this right here. Wow, look at that. Look at that. I always get my trimmers and I make sure I get in there and I go against the grain just like that. Look at that. Wow, look at that. Then I always hit the bottom too, just like this. Wow, look at that. Then you want to make sure when you go in there on the side, you get in there nice and tight too, just like that. I always try to be mindful of everything and try to make sure I get it all the way. And then what you want to do is you want to get your magic magnetic mark and you want to make your dots as the reference points. Because you just never know. I don't think nobody can pass this in regular motion. I mean, just look at it. And I got the lid open. Wow. Call me paranoia or schizo. Girl. But every time I rent an Airbnb, I always check the light switches in the master bathroom. You just never know. Basically, all this method all you need to is a Rubik's Cube ball. I don't think nobody can figure this out in regular motion. I mean, just look at it. I always bring my clippers and I put a number 2 card on there. And I always go against the grain just like this right here. And I always use my finger to wrap up any residue that's on there. Because you just never know. And then you gotta get your magic magnetic mark and make your dots as the reference points. Look at that. Wow, look at that. That's perfect. That is perfect. I don't think nobody can pass that in regular motion. And yeah, I got the nerve to want to call me booty and farty. People always calling me paranoid and schizo. But I don't care. I'm gonna show y'all how to check the light switches at the Airbnb after you done added your reference points. Basically, you gotta get you a thermometer and you wanna make sure you check the temperature of every reference point. You wanna go on each side and you wanna check it just like that. And then you wanna go on the bottom and you wanna check that too, just like this. Right there. That's the spot right there. So what you wanna do is you wanna get your taser. And you wanna put the flashlight on it just like this. And you wanna heat it up a little bit. And then you wanna go ahead and tase it a little bit just like that. Right in that weak spot. Wow, look at that. That's perfect. Look at that. Wow, look at that. I don't think nobody can pass this in regular motion. And after you heat it up and tase it a little bit, then you want to make sure you go ahead and get your Band-Aid. And you want to put it right there in the spot just like that. I always use my middle finger to wipe off any residue. Cause people always calling me paranoid and schizo. Well, fuck you. I'll never rent an Airbnb again if I can't check the light switches in the master bathroom with a little bitty Chips Ahoy chocolate chip cookie. Basically, all I do is I make sure I go get me a big old pack from Costco. I just call the Airbnb host and I make sure I let them know that I'm gonna go ahead and check the light switches in the master bathroom. And then I just get the cookie and I take a little bite out of it and I set it at the light switch just like this. Sorry, y'all, I got these sunflower seeds in my mouth. I'm be hungry. Basically, you gotta make sure you bring your clippers with you to the Airbnb. And then you wanna go against the grain just like that. I always just use my finger to wipe off any residue that built up on there. And then you wanna go up tight to it like this on the other side just like that. Look at that. That's perfect. Look at that. Then you want to make sure you do the same thing right above it too, just like that. Wow, look at that. Look at that. That's perfect. Then I always make a couple passes on the bottom. Then I'm going to go ahead and get my magic magnetic marker. I'm going to go ahead and make my dots as the reference points. Because you just never know. Why? Just because y'all call me paranoid and schizo don't mean my method's not flawless for checking the light switches at the Airbnbs when you rent them. Basically, the first thing I do is always get a hold of the host, and then I ask them about the light switches in the master bathroom. And I always put my core mates up there in place just like that. And then I always get my trimmers and I make sure I go against the grain just like that right there. Look at that. That's perfect. Look at that. I always make sure I get in her nice and tight just like this. And then you want to make sure you do the same thing on the bottom like that. Wow, look at that. That's perfect. I always use my finger to wipe off any residue that's on her. Because you just never know. Wow, look at that. And yeah, I got the nerve to want to call me names like I occur. Then what you gotta do is you gotta get your magic magnetic mark and you wanna make sure you make your dots as the reference